Hey guys, it is Wingy here and welcome back to a brand new video. Today I'm going to be looking at two major Marvel movies, Deadpool and Logan. I should have used knives, not my fingers, like that's not a threat. But yeah, so I'm going to be looking at these two movies today and comparing them both. Not necessarily about which one is the better movie because I think they are too different to compare on that level, but comparing their impact on the genre itself. They are both challenges to the genre and the tropes of the genre. And I think they're two movies that we needed given how there is a superhero fatigue at the moment. Whereas both these movies, they both brought something new, which considering how long the genre's been going on for, that's quite impressive. But they do share a lot of similarities. Their leading character is played by someone who is universally agreed to be perfect for that role. They're both made by Fox, and they're both two movies that whilst they are part of a universe, it's not explicitly stated that they are part of that universe, if that makes sense. There's some references, but it's not like they are strict to a certain timeline, which is a bit of a relief in terms of the X-Men timeline. Yeah, no point keeping up with that, is there? They both have fairly low budgets given, well, still quite high, but low for a superhero movie, and they are both R-rated. So without further ado, let's get on and look at the two movies separately. And first of all, I'm going to be looking at Deadpool as that one came out first. And he would probably kill me if I put Wolverine ahead of him because, you know, he's so meta. He will just literally come out of the movie theatre and stab me. Or shoot me. Or piss on me. It's Deadpool. He'll do whatever. When Deadpool was first announced, I have to admit, I was so relieved. There was talks of a Deadpool movie for years and years and years. Ryan Reynolds even said it took him about 11 years to get that movie made. And of course, we all know the story. He was in X-Men Origins Wolverine, and if Ryan Reynolds wanted to play Deadpool in the future, he had to play him in that film. Unfortunately, that film was a load of shit. But he didn't stop persevering. Test footage was leaked online, and Fox, because of the fan reception, they were forced into making this movie. And then last year, what did we get? One of the most funny and original comic book movies, yet surprisingly comic book accurate things I've seen in a long time. Everything about this movie, including the run-up and the marketing, and it was just completely different from anything we'd expected before. Sure, they did the usual things of going to Comic-Con and Hall H and talking about it, multiple different interviews, multiple trailers, but it's the way that the people behind this movie did those things that really set Deadpool apart. Even looking at the posters. I mean, just look at the posters. The Valentine's one, the emoji one, like, they were just so unique. Plus, every now and again, there was a little sketch with Deadpool, whether it was for testicular cancer, whether it was for Halloween. Just everything about it just made it feel like Deadpool was a real person. But the way that they handled everything, I think that is one of the main reasons why Deadpool ended up being the highest grossing X-Men movie. I think the highest grossing R-rated movie of all time. But that's not just all it did. There was actually a film at the end of it, which is hilarious. And Deadpool did something different that we haven't really seen in a comic book movie. Obviously there have been spoofs and parodies such as superhero movie, but this was a superhero movie that in itself was a parody and a spoof of other superhero movies. Sure, it might have followed some of the main tropes of a comic book movie, but the way that it did them completely just, it seemed to make it fresh again. Even though there is the obvious things in there, they even reference it in the movie. Even in the main title sequence where they're showing all the different names and it says a British villain, some jumped up arsehole, the girl he has to save or whatever it was he said, but you get the point. While still being accurate to that comic book character and still coming up with a coherent, entertaining, action-packed movie. It's essentially two movies in one, but they managed to figure it out and make it work. This movie utilised something that we haven't really seen in a comic book movie before, properly anyway. If you're a fan of the TV show Arrow, then you'll be aware of every episode how most of it is set in the modern day. However, there are flashbacks to Oliver Queen 5 years prior to when this story was set. Deadpool used that same thing. This isn't a linear story, and it changed up the entire way that you can tell an origin story for a superhero. Typically, it's we meet the guy before he's a superhero, something bad in his life happens, some weird shit goes on, and he becomes whatever man or woman. Nope, not in Deadpool. You start this movie off with Deadpool as Deadpool, and then over the course of the runtime, Deadpool starts to tell you how he got into this mess, and it's weird because it leads up to where we left off. That didn't really make sense. It's sort of very back and forth. And the first time I watched it, I have to admit, it was quite jarring. But the more and more you watch it, the more and more it makes sense. If this story was linear, this movie probably wouldn't have worked. It makes the movie seem more balanced. Having a bit of Deadpool, having a bit of Wade, having a bit of Deadpool, a bit of Wade. Oh look, he's Deadpool now. More Deadpool. So it's just little things like that, having the flashbacks. It changes the superhero genre. It doesn't have to be, here's a guy, then he's this, now he's this superhero. It was quite refreshing refreshing to see that. And it was also really refreshing with Deadpool to see a superhero movie that for once wasn't taken too seriously. I'm sure by Ryan Reynolds and the scriptwriters and Tim Miller, yeah, they took the making of the movie seriously. What I mean is this character of Deadpool and this movie as a whole doesn't really take himself too serious. Usually you look at someone like Superman or Captain America and they're stereotypically a goody two-shoes, whereas with Deadpool's like, no, I'm an arsehole. And of course, not even the characterization, just everything that happens in the movie, nothing is really taken too seriously. It's all very light-hearted. Even the own Fox universe, they're taking the piss out of. I'm taking you to the professor. McAvoy, Stewart, I just can't keep up with these fucking timelines. Excuse my terrible impressions, however, and I'm probably forgetting the quotes wrong, but yeah, you get the idea. It just doesn't take itself seriously at all. Mixed in with quite a tragic, probably one of the most tragic backstories so far out of any of the Marvel characters that we have seen on the big screen. So moving on from the Merc with the mouth now, after giving us a movie that was very accurate in terms of its portrayal of the character, its suit, its story is very similar to something we've had before, but quite different, and a movie that tonally didn't feel like anything else. Then we go to Logan. Now Logan is quite a different case, because unlike Deadpool, you don't have a comic book accurate version of that character. You have a great actor, Hugh Jackman is fantastic. I don't think anyone would dispute that Hugh Jackman is incredible as Wolverine. But unlike Deadpool, he doesn't have a comic book accurate suit. Ryan Reynolds, like Deadpool, is Canadian, and I think they are actually the same height in real life as he is in the comic books. Whereas Hugh Jackman, he's not Canadian, he's Australian. Wolverine in the comics is like 5'3" or 5'4". Hugh Jackman's over 6 foot tall. And yet, someone who is probably the least accurate for that role over the last, 17, 18 years he's been playing him now? Probably the best we're ever gonna get. I said that like, probably the best we're ever gonna get. No one can do it. No. Hugh Jackman fucking kills it as Wolverine. And Logan, again, game changer. This isn't your average comic book movie. In fact, it probably feels like the least comic book movie that we've ever had. And that isn't necessarily a bad thing. As I say, people are kind of getting sick of the formulaic routines that we are expecting from a superhero movie. And this just feels like more of a character piece than it does an action superhero camp whatever. You have this guy in this movie who is just down and out. He's getting old. He's as much as people see any superhero as this incredible power and a force for good and someone who is put up on such a high pedestal, this movie did a really good job of showing you, doesn't matter what they did in the past, they're still people. They get old. They can't always be who you thought they were. Or maybe they never were the person that you did think they were. Particularly Professor X, man. Like, seeing him in this movie, it's heartbreaking. Because you see Professor X in all these other movies, and he's this very sort of charming, sort of chilled out, relaxed guy who you can tell is really, really powerful, really, really smart. But unless he has to, he won't really show you that. He's not like the other X-Men, like Cyclops or Storm. He's not going to go out there and take out the bad guy. He knows what he could do. He knows it's dangerous. So to see him, someone who is probably one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful mutant in the entire X-Men franchise, to see him like this is a real eye-opener. Logan as well. You can tell, Logan is never one for just dealing with people's shit. He was never really a happy-go-lucky guy, was he? But in this movie, he just doesn't give a fuck. Similar to Deadpool, who also doesn't give a fuck, but it's done differently. And that's what I like about Logan. It's kind of the polar opposite of Deadpool. I like seeing a movie like this because whilst Deadpool challenged how we see superhero movies as a whole, Logan challenges how you see the actual characters themselves. So it's really good to see how he goes from the first X-Men movie to how he is now. Plus, this movie is kind of a metaphor, quite an on-the-nose metaphor, but it shows you how the biggest villain can be yourself, and how over time you can be your own worst enemy. It shows people that you don't necessarily need a huge CGI army of aliens or whatever. You don't need one big villain behind the scenes pulling all the strings. Sometimes life itself is its biggest threat, or is your biggest threat. I can't talk today, and I like how they did that. They didn't necessarily have to have a big bad. They do, and I know people complain saying, oh well, Marvel villains are crap, with a few exceptions, but in this it literally is the main villain in this film is Logan, and how he feels within himself, and his entire life around him is just falling apart. But this movie does another thing that I hope more and more superhero movies do in the future. Going back to before when I said that yeah, they're older in this movie. It shows that you don't have to keep rebooting a superhero franchise every few years with a new actor who is younger, like they have done with Batman and Spider-Man and other characters like that. It shows you can cast someone way back in the day, and then you can make a movie that is so brutal and heartbreaking like this one is, with the same guy 20 odd years later. Well, nearly 20 years. Don't worry about how much money you may or may not make off the film. Don't worry about overuse of violence or blood or swearing or anything like that. As long as it is accurate to that character, then it is completely fine, and fans, they will go and watch that. I mean, I don't want to see the Logan equivalent of Spider-Man or the Hulk, because that wouldn't really work. But something like this, I absolutely do want to see again with another character. So, Deadpool and Logan, they are both game changers. I've made quite a few points. I've not said a load of stuff, like I would have said a lot more, but I didn't want this video to be like 3 hours long. But they both are really great films, and they do make people look at the genre and think, wow, they don't all have to be a certain way, they can be like that. And considering that these movies, as I said before, are two complete polar opposites, it's amazing how fresh and different they both are amongst a group of comic book movies for both Marvel and for DC that do feel quite repetitive, as enjoyable as they are. I mean, when you look at both of them, they do things that not many other comic book movies would do, or probably could do or should do. It does depend on the character or the property that you are making that movie from. It shows it doesn't matter if it has a smaller budget. It shows that the studio not interfering actually works. It shows being faithful to that character definitely works. It shows that no matter how much blood and gore and violence and swearing that you throw in a superhero movie, if it is right for that character and it is fitting for that character, then do it. But I think they're both game changers in a weird way for a very strange reason. They don't have to worry about linking up with another universe. It feels like now with both Marvel and DC that they're always building to something else. With the phase 1 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, you obviously had the build up to the first Avengers movie, and then every movie after that feels like it has to link up or connect to something else that is going to come further down the line. There's always something established in it that will be answered further down the line. And you end up with a movie like Ant-Man or Doctor Strange that are great movies, yeah, but are really kind of forgettable. And even though Deadpool and Logan do exist in a movie universe already, they're not really tied to it. They're not really bound to do anything. They're not really setting anything up. They're just their own independent property. And given how cinema now, everything has to be a cinematic universe. Even Transformers is doing a cinematic universe. Don't do a Transformers cinematic universe. I don't want to see a Bumblebee movie. I don't give a shit. But yeah, as great as it is to see all the characters link up in the Avengers or the Justice League, or like in Thor Ragnarok where we're going to get the Hulk and Thor teaming up, let the characters be themselves. Let them breathe on their own. But the question is, which one has done more for the genre? Honestly, it is going to sound like a cop-out, but both. I think they're too different to say which one stands out more as a movie that really pushes the buttons of the genre. You look at Deadpool and you see a faithful recreation of a comic book character, with some great action and some great casting as well. And we have a character in it who isn't this goody two-shoes. He's an anti-hero, probably more so than Wolverine is, and yet we still root for him. And it's clear that Deadpool was a passion project, and it worked. And it shows that you can poke fun at superhero movies or other superheroes. Whereas Logan, it shows you that you can stick with these characters for a number of years. You shouldn't worry about rebooting or refreshing the franchise every few years. It shows you that these characters are actually vulnerable, and it shows you that in a way that no other superhero movie has really shown that before, or at least as in depth as Logan did. And without giving away spoilers, it did some really ballsy stuff. I think both of them show you don't necessarily need to be a crime fighter, you just need to be a well thought out character. And as I say, it is a cop-out, but I do think that if more studios and more creatives behind any of these superhero movies, or any yet to come, I hope they look at both of these movies and think, you know what, things are stale. We don't have to do them that way. We can do things the way that these two movies have done. Maybe we can do things in a way that neither of those movies did, but no other movie has done before. Some people have said that Logan seems to be the end of the comic book era, and I really don't think that's the case. I think Deadpool and Logan are a new beginning, and if they keep doing stuff like that every now and again, then I'm going to be really, really happy. But what do I know? I'm just sat in my bedroom with a camera. So anyway, guys, that's going to be it from me. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you agree? Do you think that Logan and Deadpool are game changers? Which one do you think was better for the genre? Do you think it was the light-hearted approach of Deadpool, or the more somber character piece that was Logan? Whatever your thoughts, let me know in the comments below. I'm very interested in this one, actually. Probably more so than any other time I've said. I'd be really curious. But if you did enjoy this video, make sure you leave a like on it. Subscribe if you want to see more like this on my channel. And if you did that, I would love you forever. But until next time, guys, take care of yourselves. Goodbye. over time, you can be your worst own enemy. What? English, man.